this evening, although it is only evening in Australia, I believe, for our audience. My name's Helen Wood and I'm the CEO of TMS Consulting, and very privileged and pleased to be hosting tonight's webinar on behalf of the Transformation League partners. TMS is a member of the TTL, and we'll hear a little bit about what TTL is about shortly from one of our partners in France, but very pleased to be here and hosting our inaugural, in fact, our first webinar in this context, and certainly from Australia. So a couple of quick housekeeping things. If I could ask everyone to stay on mute if you're not speaking, just to save some of the background noise. We will have the chat room open, and a colleague of mine, Bianca, will be monitoring that. We may have time for questions. We'll see how we go. We have some questions for our panel all the way through. And we will also be using Mentimeter. So if you have your smartphone or your device there, we'll be asking you to log on shortly and fill in a short survey, which will show the results of a little later in the session. So as I said, good evening Australia, but good morning to France, the UK, several countries within Africa, the Netherlands, South America. I think we have quite a few countries represented this evening. I won't try and list them all, but thank you very much everyone for joining us. And our topic this evening, the future of work is here. Is your business ready? Obviously, the events of the last 6 to 9 months across the world in relation to COVID-19 and the associated response to the pandemic has driven a lot of change in business, a lot of change in expectations about the way that we work. And the partners from TTL thought it would be a great opportunity to get everyone together and to share some thoughts about that. We only have an hour, unfortunately, this evening, so we will move fairly quickly, but we will distribute the slides after the session, and we look forward to getting some feedback from you through Mentimeter. As I said, if we do have time, we will certainly open up for questions, but we will see how we go. To the Mentimeter survey, I will just be showing you that on the screen in just a moment. Okay. So there's some questions that we have popped into Mentimeter. So if you go to menti.com on your devices and enter the code that you can see on the screen, you'll see 5 questions come up that we'd really appreciate you answering over the next little while. We give about 5 to 10 minutes for people to respond. So, and the code will stay up in the right-hand corner of the slide. So if I move on now, don't worry, the code will come up on the screen. So we've got a few questions there. We're just keen to get your thoughts and see what it looks like across the entire group. And as I said, we've got a couple of these through the session. So we look forward to seeing your feedback. Now I'd like to hand over to Julhiet Lever. Julhiet is from Julhiet Sterwen from France and one of the partners of the Transformation League, to give us a brief introduction. And just a reminder, if you have just joined us, please go on mute unless you're speaking. Over to you, Julhiet.
Hello everybody, thank you to be connected with us this morning. So Julhiet Lever, I'm the Deputy CEO of Julhiet Sterwen. So the first question perhaps we can ask together is why we created this Transformation League. So the Transformation League with our partners was created 3 years ago, and our goal was to gather independent consulting firms specialized in consulting, business consulting transformation. And across the globe. That means that for now we are in Europe, in North America, in Australia, in Asia, in Africa, and South America. Why this creation? Because we strongly believe altogether that we think and work smarter on the global landscape. By sharing our research and development, our value, our diversity, we would like to provide our clients some inspirational and creative solutions with the support of a global network all over the world. So thank you again to our guest, international guest, to be there and connected this morning, and I'll leave the floor to Helen.
Thank you, Julhiet. appreciate you being so succinct, so we can maximise our time with our panel this evening and to hear hopefully from our audience as well. So as I said, we're talking about the future of work and what's changed. So we thought we'd invite a very prestigious panel along to share some thoughts with us this evening. We have Dodson from BUA Group. Dodson has an extensive career and experience in human resources across North Africa, based in Nigeria, but also globally. He's currently the group head, as I said, at the BUA Group. Marilyn is the CEO of Darling Downs and Westmoreton Primary Health Network. Marilyn had a very distinguished and long career in the public service in Australia at both the state and national level before taking over as the CEO of the Primary Health Network with an extensive background in disability and child safety. Philip, welcome. He has an experienced executive with extensive experience in business management and clinical psychology, now Global VP for est-elle. So welcome to our panel. We'll be hearing from each of them at different times. We have some questions we'll put to the panel. We hope you'll find their thoughts interesting and stimulating in terms of thinking about our own workplaces, what we're seeing, what's changing, and what might be some of the innovations and benefits that might come as we see COVID and the response to COVID continue to affect the world globally. In terms of our session, we are going to talk a little about the changes that we're seeing. So what is actually happening in the workplace? What are we seeing at different countries, in different countries across the world? Changing employee expectations. How are our staff and employees now experiencing their workplace? Have their expectations changed? And if so, in what context? We're all going to also talk about emerging new ways of working and what are some of the things that we're seeing, both in terms of innovation, but also future trends, getting people's thoughts on what those might be. And we'll come to the audience with a question again through the Mentimeter app in order to test your thoughts about what's happening in terms of innovation, etc., a little later in the session. So COVID has made us reconsider our traditional ways of working, but perhaps the world was ready for that anyway. And there would also be a lot of work that would be influencing what we're talking about tonight outside the pandemic, but it's obviously been enough of a catalyst to make us all think about the way that we operate. Certainly in Australia, I know the changes have been quite dramatic for many organisations, and I'm sure we'll hear similar stories from across the world. So we'll go to our panel session straight away. My first question is for Dodson. Dodson, what do you think have been the key challenges or changes? What are you seeing as a result of the pandemic?
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Helen. This question, thank you very much for the question. This question can be approached from different angles. From the point of view of economy, globally, there's no doubt about it. The global economy has experienced a downturn. Specifically, if I want to mention my country or some other countries in Africa, I think it's just a matter of time, for some countries around the world to go into recession. So that is talking globally, and I believe everybody is aware of that. But talking about the world of work, I will also approach it from two angles: the employer's angle and, of course, the employee angle. There's no doubt about it. Because of the pandemic, there have been a reduction in capacity for organizations in terms of production capacity that has gone down. There has also been a lot of strategies by organizations to see how they can improve on production and take advantage of growth opportunities around them. There's also the challenge of business continuity, which of course BCP is quite pronounced, as it were. But more importantly, from the part of the business, there is this requirement on how to support employees in the workplace, as it were, because it's expected that the pandemic has actually caused a lot of health and mental and wellness issues. So from the end of the business, that is the employer, there is a lot of consideration on how to support employees in the workplace. For instance, of course, there was a total lockdown at some point, after which, for example, in my organization, we had to deploy a gradual resumption in the office. where rotation became critical. So employees are rotated to come to work as, you know, from effective from sometimes in August. And the concern for employers now is how to engage the employees more, especially in the area of upskilling employees, because the workplace has changed and things are not going to be the same as it were. So the critical expectation now is, how do we improve on the skills of our people, especially IT skill, and of course the technology skill, because people have to work more remotely. And people are working from home, people are working from remote locations, as it were. These are some of the challenges that are there, both on the side of the employer and of course the employee. And other challenges that organizations are facing today and employees is the issue of flexi work, is the issue of, you know, how do you balance work with people's health, that is work-life balance, as it were. Employers are also considering the issue of pay, and which of course is becoming critical. And there's a lot of redundancy that is taking place all over the place, because as a matter of fact, like I said earlier, there is a reduction in productivity, reduction in output, reduction in production output. And on the strength of that, you see employers are cutting their numbers. They are cutting their manpower. And some that are not cutting their manpower, they are cutting their pay. So it's a big challenge that we have here with us. And there are a lot of statutory obligations from the end, that is in place, that organizations are beginning to look at and reviewing it. And that's why, for instance, in Africa and of course in Nigeria, organizations are beginning to look at their, you know, manuals. Organizations are beginning to look at their handbooks and seeing how they can make some changes in order to integrate the new realities that we have on ground. There's also the challenge of, look, what is more relevant for organization now? Is it about delivery, or is it about coming to work and you know, physical presence in the workplace? So these are some of the challenges that are there. And I think organizations around here are beginning to consider how we do our work, deploying technology, deploying you know, some of the technology that are useful, as it were, you know, within the organization. But critical for us is how do you begin to appraise, how do you assess people's performance, you know, if they have to work remotely, as it were. These are all the challenges that are there. And I think there are a couple of others, but for now, these are some of the challenges I've identified.
Thank you, Dotson. Very good segue into the next question for Marilyn and Philip. But yeah, obviously many challenges in there that you've noted, and the world is adjusting, you know, business is adjusting, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues in the next few years. So let me get a brief comment from Marilyn next about the way this has affected your business, Marilyn, in particular. What change have you seen directly as a result of the pandemic?
Helen, if I can just, and good evening and good morning to everyone, if I could just give a little bit of context for what my company does. We're an Australian government initiative, even though we're a not-for-profit, and our role is to commission health services for the community, as well as look after doctors and allied health professionals in general practice. And we were a key part of the Australian government's response to COVID. So not only did we have to do some emergency work, we also had to continue with business as usual. So some of the things we had to do for the Australian government was to set up respiratory clinics, provide personal protective equipment to doctors and allied health. We had to set up telehealth for our doctors. And because we were on a state border and the borders were closed, we had to make sure that people living along those borders had access to telemedicine. So they were some of the things that we did, and what we did was set up an incident management team within our organisation to deal with the emergency, as well as having a business as usual team. Now, during that time, we were locked down out of the workplace for 14 weeks. And not only did we have, were we working from home, but we had parents who were also having to homeschool children while trying to work. And I guess we just we learnt some things as we went along, and obviously those parents were very concerned about their ability to fulfil their work responsibilities while also homeschooling their children. So we came to the conclusion that it really didn't matter what hours they worked, as long as they produced the outcomes or the outputs that they needed. And that made everybody a little bit more relaxed. And we'd been talking for a long time about working on an outcomes basis, and TMS Consulting have been part of our transformation journey. And it was, not wasting the crisis. We thought, well, we really need to look at this on an ongoing basis, rather than measuring people's inputs, like the hours that they turn up at work, looking at what tasks they achieve and what their productivity is out of the workplace. We also obviously went a lot more digital, so making sure that people don't necessarily have to meet face to face. We have a lot of technology that enables us to do a lot of things remotely now, and that's really important for our business because we're spread across a really wide geographic area. So I guess for our people, it is it's balancing that working from home and the responsibilities of family with work, being more digital, and I guess we also learned we really didn't need a lot of the hierarchy that we had in our organisational structure, that things worked faster and more agile when we had a flatter structure. So one of the things we are looking at is how we apply a much more agile approach to our work.
Right. Again, probably an example of things we were thinking about, but this crisis, I guess, caused them to happen very quickly, and we had to adjust. So it's amazing what we can do when we have to. Thanks, Marilyn. Really appreciate your thoughts. Philip, how about from your perspective? What's been happening within ESLA that you've noticed or observed?
For us, as we're a commercial organization, what was for us a major challenge is that we used to be challenged for 1 or 2 or 3 or 5% sales growth or down, but we were facing 80% sometimes in some period of the first half, 80% of our business disappearing. So manager has to manage that. Suddenly you see your top line drop by 80%, and it's happened over almost 2 months. So that's something that the organization will have to face. So you have to manage your own stress. You have to be more agile, to organize things in a way that you have to protect your organization, but you have also to protect your people. So for us, the focus was facing the reality, adjusting a capability and a capacity in the current situation, but indirectly we taking care of the people. So I think that for us, what we discover is that with all the new system that you have, with all the technology, with all the AI, with all the robots, the people are still key. So who are the people, by the way? The consumer, the customers, and your own employees. So we have a long time, and we focus so much first on the people that we have, because it's part also of the organization. First, to protect them. Secondly, to put them ready for the restart, which happened as well. So that was for us the main challenge. And I should say, as has been indicated, agility, manage our own anxious and anguish, because that's something that we have. And I put something work in a different way, and that's probably where we have done a lot of transformation, which probably never happened in the past 10 years. That had happened during the past 6 months. Some of them will remain, some of them will disappear, but that's also for us a key challenge. So that's why I put on in some reaction in complement of what my 2 colleagues have said. Yes.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Philip. So our panel between them have covered some of these points already, but just perhaps a couple to add that summarises or adds to what people have said. There's definitely new ways of working, and that term is used a lot in Australia. I'm sure internationally you have a version of that as well. Working virtually from home, flexibly. People have seen the benefits as well as some of the challenges, but there have certainly been some benefits. So people are looking to maintain and leverage, as Marilyn said, some of those benefits from COVID. But as Philip said, we don't know what will stay and what won't. But as leaders of organisations, as leaders in industry, we need to be really clear about asking the right questions about how to move forward. Digitalisation, artificial intelligence, the need of huge demand, very quick demand for online services. I'm sure every country in the world had the same experience as Australia, where suddenly businesses which would never have considered selling online before suddenly are, and wanting to go to their customer rather than traditionally their customer coming to them. So lots to think about, and depending on your business for our audience and what part of industry you're in, or where you are located in terms of the customer and offering those services, you know, it'd be interesting to see what everyone's experience is. The prioritising the now. So again, each of our panel members talked about supporting staff, but also customers and suppliers. We saw, you know, examples where people would change their payment routines to support small business or suppliers in a time when their revenue was significantly reduced. Looking for ways to stabilise revenue, doing business differently. Many businesses taking on new lines, new ways of new products, new things that they're releasing to the market. And in terms of the workforce strategies, Philip mentioned agility. It's going to be the key word. Marilyn also is very focused on agility and agile ways of working in her organisation. I know this well, and it's going to be something all of us need to think about, as is the emphasis on wellbeing. And a couple of you mentioned that also. So as we go to the next question, I'll ask Marilyn to lead this one. We're really thinking about employee expectations and what are we seeing in terms of the way that employees are thinking about their work, the way they want to work, what are their expectations, how are they changing? Marilyn.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I think that employees are expecting more of that opportunity to work remotely from the workplace and to balance parenting responsibilities or caring responsibilities as well. I think that we're moving away from that sort of micromanagement of inputs to being able to focus on outputs or outcomes and take responsibility for achieving those individually. I think certainly our experience has been that people have appreciated that faster decision making and agility that comes with flatter organisational structures and not having multiple layers of decision makers to make decisions. In terms of operating remotely, people are certainly expecting access to digital tools, and we're making sure that where possible that our staff are equipped with the tools that they need to do their job effectively. Interestingly, one of the things we looked at was people want not to be pigeonholed in terms of their roles. They want to be able to have some mobility laterally across the organisation, and our thoughts are that if we move to a more agile way of operating, that's going to enable us to bring together people to work on various projects or tasks to get them done. And hopefully that's going to give people some variety in the work that they do. Helen, I guess that they're the key things that I think people are expecting going forward. As I think Dosen said too, is I think we've done about 5 or 10 years change in 10 months, and this has really given us a lever to spring forward. And as you know, our change transformation we've labelled Project Springboard, because what we want to do is take all of these learnings and apply them into the post-COVID or peri-COVID world.
Oh, thank you, Marilyn. I think that's a big question for all of us, that I encourage the audience to have a think about as well, is how do we leverage the benefits? How do we leverage achieving that level of change in our organisations that quickly? I had a government client here in Australia who said, Helen, if we had done this on purpose, it would have taken us perhaps 2 years to move everyone to working from home. We did it in a week and we did it successfully. So given organisations can move at that speed, how do we leverage some of the benefits of that time? So let me go to Philip now. What are the key trends you're observing, Philip? Things in your country in particular, or globally, as it relates to sort of employee expectations? What's popping up on the radar?
Well, for me, there is five key things that I could summarize for that. Is people like to be support mean in terms of if they have to work from home, how we can make their work from home easier. So properly equipped having the right communication system. So there is probably an impact on the technology. The second element I put is be trust. When you move from an organization where visual is a way to manage and to control, when you are in distance, the trust is a key element. So you have to also consider that I have to be trust that when I'm at home, I work, and I'm not just staying home and enjoying the time. So that's, and for some manager, by the way, and some leaders is really challenging. The third part will be,
Philip, let me just jump in there. I'm sorry. Could I just remind the audience, if you're not speaking, could you please be on mute? It's just someone typing in the background. We can hear you. So if you could go on mute for me, that would be great. Back to you, Philip.
Yeah, okay. So the other element will be probably have a clarity of what is I'm expected to do. So having probably a management by objective, which is reinforced and with clear objective. That's the way also when you're in distance to align what I have to deliver, which is not so much the case when you are used to work in an office with a collaborative space. You need to be informed, and we have seen that at all levels of the business value and the chain value. Information has to be given to customer, to consumer, to the employees, so that reinforces the capability to communicate and the quality of your communication. And the last part is more on how we create sharing values and keep the collaboration, which is part of the dynamic of an organization when you are all spread off in distance. And it will be continuing because most of the organizations like mine have adopted also the fact that we used to have quite traditional approach to working from home, when now is almost generalized to have now 2 days working from home. Even after the pandemic, as a given and a taken from this period. So that's where I will stop so far.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip. And Dotson, you obviously addressed some of this in your previous comments, but anything else you'd like to add here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Helen. The trends for the future, at least from my country, and I also want to believe globally, are going to be a lot of flexi work. Of course, I know some of the European countries, they are quite used to it, but Africa is not very strong when it comes to all of that. So there's going to be a lot of flexi work, stroke work-life balance, which of course is going to be one of the trends that is going to gain a lot of traction in Africa. Then there's going to be a lot of expectation, a lot of employer confidence in employees, and also vice versa, such that if employees have to work from home or work remotely, there will be a lot of expectation and confidence. So confidence is going to be built over time, from the employer to the employee. I also want to say that there's going to be a lot of new skill set requirement. Most organizations are coming to terms with the fact that automation is here, technology is here. So a lot of skills, new skills requirement is going to take the forefront, for businesses and for employees in the workplace for the future. Another point that I also put down here is that I also believe there's going to be a lot of leadership support, coming from or manager support coming from the end of the organization, such that at this point in time, if people have to work remotely from work, that employee will require a lot of support, will require a lot of financial, moral support in order to be able to get them to deliver on their results, working remotely from home. And one expectation that we should look forward to as a trend for the future is that employee will expect a lot from the employer, a lot of appreciation of creativity, because we are going to see a lot of creativity from the end of employees, as it were, because they are now given opportunity to be able to develop things, from their creative reservoir of, experience and knowledge. So with that, it's expected that there will be a lot of trust between the employer and of course the employee. So going forward, these are some of the trends that I've been able to notice. And also, I like to also say this, artificial intelligence is going to take the place. So there's no going back on that. as it were. So these are some of the things that I've also noticed here. And finally, I want to say this, that there's going to be a lot of expansion in contingent workers, all right? Because there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that, especially, you know, in my own climate, that is Africa, as it were. So these are the trends that will be there. And it's very good that every one of us should be able to wake up to that as quickly as possible. Excellent. And understand that it's a new work environment for us. And I hope,
very much,
you know, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dotson. And, you know, you all referred to trust, outcomes management, different ways of engaging with our employee. If I could wrap all that up, it feels the relationship is changing. Yeah, our actual relationship with our employees is different, will be different moving forward, is different now. And it has to evolve like all relationships. It'll grow, it'll have its moments, but it will be interesting to see how we go. So I'm just going to cover a few points relative to the questions we've asked the panel, just a couple of extra points as I did previously. But while I'm doing that, I would encourage you to grab your phones again and go to menti.com. We're actually going to have some participation now from the audience. We'd like to get your thoughts on a question in just a moment, which I'll give you in a second. So I think our panel covered that really well in terms of what's changing around employee expectations. A couple of summary comments. They want to be more self-sufficient and self-directed. Dotson referred to creativity. That's going to be absolutely a feature of the way that people work. Lots of people having second businesses, online businesses, but also wanting to engage differently with their primary employer and what that looks like. A lot of pride, I think, in organisations we're seeing around the world, particularly what we've seen in Australia, I'm sure is reflected elsewhere, that there's a sense of pride of what people have been able to achieve despite incredible challenge. And again, that is something to leverage, something to make sure that we don't lose as we move forward in our organisations. How do we help employees put their skills and energy on the things that really matter? One thing I've noticed in our consulting business is it became very crystal clear very quickly what the true priorities of the organisation were. Yeah? Every client we talked to had this experience. So many of the things that we used to do, because we've just always done them, actually ceased happening, and people focused on those things that were most important. Again, something to leverage. For leaders and managers, all our panel have mentioned that relationship, that way of interacting is changing. Leaders will have to share responsibility, encourage that creativity, have confidence in their teams. And I think this is going to be a big one where we allow people to self-manage, but also have confidence, trust that they're able to do that effectively. And as Marilyn said, we've got to focus on the outcome rather than the process, which for many years, leaders, I would say, generally struggle a little with. We delegate and then want to control the process. So it's something for us all to think about in terms of how we change that paradigm. All right, phones at the ready, everyone. So if you go to menti.com again and enter this code, it's a different code from the previous one that I used. And the question that will come up for you is this. Please start entering your answers and I will go to the screen on Mentimeter. So just bear with me for a moment so that we can see your responses.
Helen, can you share your screen again so we can get the code?
Yes, I will. Apologies. So the code is 9153955. And I'll just share that again. There we are. You'll see the code at the top there, and the rest of us should see your responses coming in shortly. So if you use that code 9153955, up should pop this question. The workplace is evolving. What changes or innovations are you seeing as the emerging trends? So perhaps comment on an innovation, what's changing, what's different. So we've got empathy, visualization, people are starting to enter. So this is great. If you continue to pop your thoughts in there, it'll pop on the screen for us all to see. Vulnerability is an interesting word. Vulnerability trust. Patrick Lencioni talks about that quite a lot, as does Simon Sinek, and becoming key to the way that leaders manage their staff. Yeah? And we say a lot in our business, leaders must go first with vulnerability, but last with problem solving. So I'll leave that for you to think about. So virtual workplaces, resilience, emotional intelligence, we can see them starting to roll there, creativity, better utilisation of technology, that's going to be a key theme. Working from home, as we've talked about, emotional intelligence, not just in our leaders, but in our teams, how they work peer-to-peer. Excellent. Virtual workplaces, virtual teams, and how they maintain a sense of team, that sense of connection, going to be really important. And what I think see technology and office design, online forums start to change to encourage that sense of connection, the human connection we all need, albeit in a more remote setting now. Being multimodal, huge focus on wellbeing. I think organisations now have to have that front and centre in their employee care approach. More internalisation and less outsourcing. So someone there saying, you know, more will happen within the company rather than perhaps outsourcing it to providers. Thank you, everyone. I'd love to hear from all of you individually, but time won't allow, but this is a great way to get some of your thoughts. Quality time programmed with team workers, yeah? Being very conscious with how we use our time in our organisations. Excellent. Shared purpose, digital culture. That'll be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. What is our digital culture? Gamification, learning organisations, improving business processes, streamlining the way we run our businesses. So we'll capture those thoughts. We really appreciate everyone. Feel free to continue to add those thoughts, and really appreciate everyone's input there. What I'll do now is go back to our main presentation. So a couple of other, just a couple of quick examples. We'll leave some time to look at the results of the earlier pulse survey that we asked you to do also through the Mentimeter app. And there's just a couple of examples here of where we're seeing quite different things starting to happen as a direct result of COVID. And there are innovations, there's a couple from different countries here. In London, a design firm called Arup designing COVID-safe modular parklets. So it's allowed restaurants to open. I think we've seen different versions of this in different countries across the world. I know I've seen the clear igloo type approach in some restaurants. This is about how we can redesign restaurants, both indoors and outdoors, to make sure that people can comfortably still enjoy all the things that we like to enjoy, but with a sense of social distancing and increasing the safety, reducing the risk of transmission, etc. Another example, just to kind of get you thinking, this is an Australian architect. Click Clacks is a system that they've designed. This is a modular solution for social distancing at work. So it's a different way of interlocking desks and countertops, workspaces, having screens, etc., but in a way that's very flexible and allows the workplace to adapt and change its workspaces to different sizes. I suspect we'll see a lot of office design change over the next 5 years. And a third example, this is an Indian company, TechMax, and they're doing sparkless, or as I like to say, touchless technology. So all sorts of examples of where they're eliminating the need for human beings to touch, you know, things that we commonly do every day. And I know in many countries, one of the biggest issues of going back to work has been sharing lifts, pressing lift buttons, all of those things that we do where multiple people are touching or accessing something at that, you know, across time. So really just a couple of quick examples to show you some of the innovations out there. I'm sure you've seen plenty yourselves, and this will continue, I think. The trends were probably there before, but as we've talked about, COVID has emphasised and become a catalyst for these things to move on very quickly. So let's now go back to our panel. Philippe, I'll ask you this question, although I have to point out the graphic here on the slide. It's so very clever. Who led the digital transformation of your company? COVID-19. Philip, what are you seeing as the likely future trends from your perspective?
I don't know if COVID-19 is a driver of the transformation, but is an initiator, is a trigger. So, I mean, we have been engaged in this reflection couple of years ago, like everybody. So first it was a nice word, and now we become a strategic, and now we become a reality and a need. So I should say that's probably an acceleration factor, and that's why for us it's so most of the time we approach digital transformation through the consumer, the customers, the systems. But now what we're also facing is about developing skills in our own capability, in our own peoples. And it touched the people as well as the manager as well. So for us, most of the work that we do now is how we make our manager a bit more, she said, digitalized, or to some extent able to manage the new technology and the new needs. Because they will be critical. They will be the agent of the change. We could have monies, we could have strategic plan, but if we don't have the execution done properly, we will face a big of the challenge. So I hope we don't need pandemia, or we don't need such a big issues to be able to drive transformation, but we need to be able, like a good surfer, you're in Australia, so you know what it means, to take the right wave and to make sure that the board is going on the right direction, and we keep all the people on board. So I will say that's for me the future trend. There is a lot of innovation, as you said. We're probably going to change the space where we work. We're going to introduce a bit more co-working. We have to do because if people work from home, we have to change the reason why they come to work. Is not to continue what they do at home. It's probably to do a new collaborative space where they will probably touch and exchange in a different way than what they do at home. So they will probably need to gain what they don't have when you work from home. The informal communication, the networking, the creativity that you have in the group space. So that's for me what is the critical element of where we try now to keep in a journey on surfing on this COVID wave, which I hope will be finished soon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Philip. The question pops to mind as you're talking, what will the workplace be for now? It isn't to come to work, it's to come to do, as you say, something different. So what will that different be? So I think in all our organisations in the audience, it'd be interesting to think about that. If we said the workplace is no longer just the place to work, what is it for? And how would we design our companies in that context? So let me now go to the original survey that we asked our audience about and show the results of that. I'll just share this and we will go. Sorry everyone, just bear with me for a moment. So the very original survey, we had 5 questions there that we asked everyone to look at. Marilyn, can you see that okay? Yep, great. Excellent, thank you. So my business has had to significantly change the way it operates due to COVID-19. So on a scale of 1 to 5, that's averaged out at about a 4.1. So for those of us here tonight, I think there's probably about 40, 45 of us online. That's a significant shift. Yeah, so there has been significant change. We also asked, the pandemic has required changes to the leadership approach in my company to keep employees engaged and motivated. Again, the majority saying that that's pretty strong, that 4.3 out of 5. It has required leaders to think differently and operate differently. Many of you have said, the majority of you in fact have said that COVID-19 has made our organisations more agile and adaptable. And I think that's one of the things. We can get lost in the challenges, but there have definitely been benefits. And I think the companies who can truly leverage those benefits will come out of this in a far better shape than when they went into it. Having said that, it does require cultural change, and several of our panel members talked to that. Agility, vulnerability, trust, flexibility, our ability to look at outcomes rather than inputs, as Marilyn said, very, very important to the way we organise our employees and our product and how everything happens in our companies. 3.8 on average said the pandemic has created new opportunities for my organisation that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. So that's still relatively high, I think, in that context of something new has happened or popped in because, again, the catalyst of COVID. And 4 out of 5, or the averaging out at 4 out of 5, strongly agree that you're optimistic about the future of your industry. So that's good to hear, and we really appreciate that audience response. So thank you. We do actually have time for a couple of questions. So let me stop sharing so I can bring you all back. I can see you now. Giovanni, what question would you have either for the panel or more broadly for our audience, or a comment that you might like to make?
No, actually, I listen I'm very happy to listen this, what I heard, because actually it is what I would have said exactly, in the sense that I experienced exactly the same. My concern is that probably for the moment, what I'm seeing is that probably we need to work a bit on the sense of belonging, because going ahead with this way, in this way, probably many people are working remotely, and so this way could change a bit the sense of belonging into an organization. So this is something probably we need to consider in the next future.
Yes, that's,
we are going to be more individual. Right, yeah. Right. So yeah. No question, just this comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly. Great. Thank you. So yes, that sense of shared purpose. How are we connecting? How do we create connection for our employees far beyond the physical presence that we used to have with them? Yes, excellent.
Very
Renee, let me go to you for a quick comment. Renee, what's sort of for you the most important thing your organisation will need to focus on in the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Oh, well, it's probably, I had 2 questions from Marilyn, not to deflect, but these are probably the 2 things. So sorry, Marilyn, put you on the spot here. The first one was around, have you given any thought to how the business as usual team and then the incident management team come together? So at some point they'll converge and we get back into this new normal or new way of working. Have you given some thought to how you'll do that and what that will look like? And probably the other question was just around, you're talking about hierarchy, and our organisation was similar, the speed in which we've been able to make decisions. We've had ways of clarity about what we need to do through the pandemic, and have had an incident response team as well, similar to you with a business as usual team. And so wanting to continue to keep that momentum around decision making and that agility. So without changing the whole organisational structure, what have you done to change the culture to be less hierarchical? So they're probably 2 things I'd like to focus on, but if Marilyn had any tips, that would be great.
Excellent. Marilyn?
Yeah, thank you. We actually have brought the business as usual and the incident management team back together now, mainly because Queensland's been in the lucky position where we don't have a lot of active cases. What we did do though, while we were preparing for that, was we had all of staff catch-ups twice a week by Zoom. And that was really just a way to bring everybody up to speed. We also had daily, because we're a health organisation, we had the daily sit reps, what's happening in terms of COVID for the whole of staff as well. And some of those catch-ups that we had weren't all about task. A lot of it was about relationship, and we did things like we would nominate a couple of people to do 3 fun facts. Tell us something, that nobody knows about you. And it was really just a way to create that sort of intimacy that you have within the workplace, outside of the workplace. We also appointed one of our senior managers to be, I guess, the welfare checker. So she would ring each staff member a couple of times a week just to have a check-in to see how they were going, make sure that they were okay. And staff have said that, they know that they had the employee assistance program, but they really appreciated that senior manager checking in on them. That was all she did. For those 14 weeks, and they actually have asked whether something like that could continue. So that's how we brought the 2 teams back together, really trying to do that cross-fertilisation along the way. And sorry, what was your second question?
I might actually hold it there. Let me just see if I can get a couple of comments from a couple other people, and then we'll come back to Renee's question if we've got some time. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Marilyn. Iona, would you have a question or a comment?
I suppose what I was reflecting on is about the engagement piece. I thought it would be quite interesting if anyone had any experience of kind of new starters, how onboarding has gone with younger generations and how they've managed to get that connectivity. I work within a university environment, and obviously we have a lot of challenges with our new intakes and trying to motivate them. So I wondered if there was any learning or ideas that any of the group could share about new starters.
Great, thank you. I might go to Philip. Philip, have you got any thoughts on that one? So onboarding new starters in a remote or working from home context? Philip, you're just on mute.
Yeah, sorry. That's an interesting question, because in fact, that was the first challenge that we face, is that we have even recruited people who never been to the office. So because their starting day was few days or just the days of the pandemic or during the pandemic. And we have to organize that as well. So what we have been doing is that we have tried to create onboarding sessions. So we used to have the usual tools on digital learning and everything. So they use the learning management system, they connect, they have a couple of modules. We organize for them a face-to-face session with new manager. And we try to create also, that's part of the organization spirit, collaborative feelings that you belong to the organization. So we have done a virtual session, using some of the tools that we have to engage them through activities, but it's a big challenge. It's true that it's difficult to have a belonging feelings if you don't even know where is your office and what is the smell of the place, what is the atmosphere, what are the people you are working with. So and we haven't restarted yet completely in this context of what we have, but so we try to use all the technology, all the new tools that we have, to engage them, but we know that it's a bit different. Most of the feedback that we get. So during the pandemic, we did a lot of engagement survey. So we use Beacon tools to drive first we focused on the well-being of the employees, more for the existing employees. And we did a survey lately for the newcomers, and we get feedback about they were impressed by the way we managed their onboarding, even on the virtual context, the distance. But it's true that it was not a normal onboarding that they could have, that visiting the factories, visiting the commercial field, having exchange with different departments physically. So there is a big challenge, and we haven't found the solution. The technology is nice, but there is a non-verbal that we can see and we can analyze when you are in face-to-face in reality, that unfortunately doesn't go through the screen completely. So, but we have the same issue with the recruitment, by the way. So we hope technology, and we have speed up the technology usage, but it doesn't completely replace the onboarding quality. So that we know that it's a bit of a challenge currently.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Philip. And someone in the chat room was just commenting about trust, something I think we've all mentioned a couple of times tonight, and that is going to be absolutely key. And it's not just about do we trust each other, it's also do we trust the process, do we trust the level of engagement, do we trust the intent? And so it'll be really important for leaders to really think about how they create an environment, we would say, with vulnerability trust, where people can bring 100% of themselves and not hold anything back. So that will be very interesting. Last question or comment to Olukemi. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Olukemi?
Yes, you are.
Thank
you.
Question?
No, just a comment really. I mean, since I'm in Uganda, My main concern is with, all the changes in the workplace and working remotely is the fact that we have a lot of internet problems, which makes it extremely difficult. And not only in Uganda, in a lot of African countries. So this will be something that really needs to be worked on if we are also to be included in this new way of working. That's my main comment.
Absolutely. And we share your pain in regional Australia. There are many parts of Australia. It's such a big country. There are many parts where technology is not as fast as it should be. The internet is not as good either. With similar challenges, but also very different, I'm sure. But it will challenge the globe, I think, in terms of how we can stay connected and have enough bandwidth for everyone to do what they need to do. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, I might move to close now. So if I could hand over to Kemi from PeopleSource Consulting. PeopleSource Consulting is one of the partners of the Transformation League, and I'd welcome some summary comments from Kemi this evening.
Hello again, everyone. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much to the panel as well, Dr. Marilyn and Philip. There have been so many insights gained. I think that the first thing to say is that the trends are pretty similar across the globe. The employee relationship has definitely changed. The non-traditional ways of working are here to stay. So psychological safety is a big term that's been used, which is really around employees feeling safe and secure. And even listening to the different comments that have come up, employees' wellness is going to be even more important now in terms of the support that they get from employees, from their employers. I think the second thing to say as well is that digitalization is here to stay. Everyone's had to adapt, and we're still adapting to technology. I recently completed a program at Imperial College on digitally transforming the business. And one of the key themes that's emerged and is also being mentioned here today is that employees will need to upskill. Artificial intelligence, all of that would have an impact, but without the employee, or even not just the employee, the managers as well, the leaders across the whole organization, digitalization is key, and upskilling employees to ensure that we have capacity and capabilities is very important. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is this theme that's been coming up from the conversations, the fact that organizations have been forced to be more output focused rather than presenteeism. So the challenge is, how do employees, how do organizations ensure that the objectives are clear so that employees are measured on what they deliver rather than being present at work? And I think the final thing that I wanted to mention that's come up as well is the fact that because the way that we work is different now, going to the office, I think Helen mentioned it after Phyllis spoke around, how do we build, and I think, sorry, Giovanni said it, how do we build a sense of belonging when we're no longer coming together and we're used to being in the office at all times? How do we ensure that we keep our corporate values, going? How do we ensure that we're communicating? And one of the reports I read recently mentioned about how when people are not in the office, when we're not connecting together, all those conversations that usually happen at the coffee point, when someone goes out for a cigarette, those are very valuable. And how do you ensure we create that in this new world of work that we're in? So lots of interesting comments, insights as well, and tips as well that we can introduce into our organization. So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming along. And we look forward to speaking to you in the future and continuing with the conversations that I've started as well. Thank you.
Right. Excellent. Thank you, Kemi. Really appreciate your comments there. And thank you everyone for joining us. The Transformation League is very pleased to host you this evening. We would like to do more of these, so please watch out for invites from your partner company that might have contacted you. There's also been some great comments in chat, so hopefully you've been following that through. We will, if we can, represent the Mentimeter results. There's also a recording of this evening, which we'll let you know where you can access that. I'm conscious there's a couple of questions we didn't get to, but hopefully, you know, some food for thought. And the future is here, so we need to engage in with it, and hopefully some good ideas tonight about how to do that. Thank you everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good evening Australia, good morning to the rest of the world.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.